Okay.
Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast for another Authors Tuesday. So today I'm delighted to be joined by another great guest. Her name is Margriet. So you're very welcome along today, Margriet.
Hi, Mark. How's it going? Thank you for
Great, great.
having me.
What's your full name again, Margriet
It's Margriet Maitland.
Maitland? Well, I just didn't
Yes.
want to mess up your name, so that would have
No,
been a great start.
the funny thing is nobody ever gets my first name right the first time around, so it's
Yeah,
okay. I'm
yeah.
used to it.
No, but thanks a million for joining me tonight in the podcast. You're very good, or today rather, in America. Whereabouts are you living yourself? Whereabouts?
I'm on Long Island in New York.
Long Island. Oh,
Mhm.
cool. Very nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah. And you've got the Super Bowl tonight. Oh,
Yes, big
go.
American holiday today. Lots of food that isn't good for you, and lots
Yeah.
of cheering. And I'm not even sure who I want to win, but it's a fun event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great fun. Exactly. And so that's great. Would you mind just telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and the books
Sure.
you've written, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm born and raised on Long Island in New York, USA, and I guess I was a debut author when I wrote when I released my first book a couple of years ago. I'm a mom of two, and just busy like everyone else. But so my writing really got started many years ago as a hobby. As I was
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, my grandfather before he died gave me the journal of his grandfather. So my great great,
Mm,
I have to like try to get all that straight. So
yeah.
the books are based on Robert's life. So Robert is my great great grandfather, and he ran away from home when he was 12. He was number 8 of 12 kids. He was in Southeast England. He was getting physically abused by his oldest brother, and he had just had about enough of that, and he had another promise beating coming to him, so he decided that was it. So he and a friend ran away, and they went to the port of Hull, which in 1849 was still a big whaling port in England and a big British naval kind of stopover or place for those ships to be moored.
Yeah.
And they stowed away on the ship. They hid in a lifeboat. Not really, they didn't know how to read. They didn't know how to swim. They just wanted to escape, So it's kind of a plan without a plan. They
Mm,
got found in the lifeboat, and then sure enough, it was a British naval vessel. So they got disciplined. They got pressed into service, and, kind of accidentally on purpose sent himself around the world for the next 7 years across all the oceans, having all kinds of adventures, and then finally landed in America and walked from San Francisco to Nebraska. So it's a 3-book series. The first 2 books finish up his ocean-faring adventures, and the third book will be the trek across America. But I've written it for age 10 and up because I really felt, because it was history, it was about a 12-year-old boy, the bravery, the perseverance, the naivety as well. Of what he did. And I just felt if it could spark a love of history, a way of looking at history in a different way for one kid, out of all of this,
yeah.
then
Yeah.
that would be a good thing. So that's what the books are about.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. Like what a great idea. To kind of keep the memory of what a great story about your great grandfather as well. So that's really cool. That's really well done with that. And is it doing good for you so far, Marguerite? Is it doing well?
I think it's doing well. I
Yeah.
do some author visits at libraries and schools. I have to be honest, I'm
Brilliant.
not really necessarily paying attention to the sales as much as I
Mm,
pay attention to reviews.
of
So I've
course, yeah.
yeah. So I'm very happy to have a decent amount of reviews, at least on the first book.
Brilliant.
In
Yeah.
Amazon, it's just a matter of people who read the second book to remember to review.
Yeah.
But I'm having a good time with it. It's been a great personal journey for me. I did so much research to make sure the history was accurate. And
Mm,
I actually found a librarian in England, in Hessel, who was very intrigued by my project. And
wow.
she looked up my family and sent me a 10-page handwritten letter with all kinds of history about my family that's in the records, my ancestors, I should say. So it's been an interesting journey. So
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it. And that's the best part of this whole process.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really, really great. And where can people buy your books as well, Marguerite? Where can
Well,
people get their hands on it?
There's a well, it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble websites. It's in a
Yeah.
few scattered bookstores, and libraries here in New York, mostly
Great.
in Lower New York and on Long Island. There's a website for the books where you can read all about the, I guess the taglines, with, the basic concepts behind
Mm.
the story is at runawayatsea.com. You can
Yeah.
also shoot me a note, on the contact page. You can see author events. You can see I do have a creative writing workshop for kids, for libraries and schools. And then
Wow.
I have
Brilliant.
a boot camp, a creative writing boot camp for adults, my publisher and I did together. So those links are on the website. And, I'm just hoping it's really action, adventure. Boy, grows to man, learns very, painful and very valuable lessons.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
hoping that, people really, they seem to be enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of really good feedback from both books. So,
That's great. Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing. I'm going to share, if you want to send me the links as well. I can share
absolutely.
them on the show notes for you as well.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Thanks very much. And as well, where did the writing journey start for you? Have you always written yourself? You kind of said you did, but has it where did it begin for you yourself?
Well, I always wanted to write a book. I was an avid reader as a kid. I read all
Mm.
kinds of stuff. I really loved getting lost in a story. It was, I guess, like a little bit of an escape from adolescence, I suppose, in
Yeah.
hindsight. But
Yeah.
I always wanted to write something. I really feel very confident with math and science as a kid. So I gravitated toward the arts, towards theater, towards writing, et
Mm.
cetera. And so I always wanted to write something. And I just didn't have an original concept. And then about a year before my grandfather died, he gave me the journal. And then a few years later, my grandmother died. And then I remembered that I actually had it because I didn't really read it at first. I put it in my filing cabinet and then I took it out and I read it and I thought, this is an incredible story of survival and perseverance. And I just feel like I had to find a way to tell it. So I
Mm.
started writing, and it was very amateurish at first. My kids were very small. It was really something I kind of whittled away at in between work and mothering and cleaning the house. And I would
Yeah.
try to sit down and grab a few minutes here or there. And then I joined a critique group, which was really fantastic way to learn because I would read my work aloud and I would get some very good constructive feedback. And at first I was really afraid to use dialogue because it was a historical piece and I didn't know, should I write it in that, that period, the way they spoke, or that would make it hard for kids to read. So I didn't know what to do.
Mm.
And then I read a book about writing, for
Oh, great.
like including imagery, et cetera. And it just gave a lot of tips and tricks for using dialogue. So I started to use it and then I just fell in love with using dialogue. So I tried to use it. Now I feel I have gained a level of expertise on, I try to include as many of the 5 senses as I can on every page, making sure
Yeah.
readers feel immersed in the work. And I really
Mm.
feel like if I have too many paragraphs without characters talking to each other, I go back and I look and see, is there any way that I can rewrite this for the characters to talk to each other? Because what I've found through the critiques and the critique group and all the beta readers that read my work is dialogue really helps them connect with the characters in the book and really become emotionally involved and care. And if your readers don't care, they're not going to finish the book. Nothing
Mm.
is going to affect them emotionally. It's like watching a really good movie and you
Yeah.
feel sad when it's over. And then the acting was great and so was the writing, because even movies that you watch, it's all based obviously on screenplays, et cetera. So to me, that's really the most important lesson that I've learned about writing. And so the first book took a really long time because I was learning how to do it. The second book I did in about 4 months.
Yeah.
So
Well, because yeah, no, that's great because it's you've made some really good points there because you're using your external resources there, like to get a book on writing, because there's so much in it's not just writing a book. You have to do your homework a lot,
right.
don't you? Like
Yeah.
yeah, so that's great for anybody that's listening. So thanks a lot for that for sharing. Like for anybody who's starting to write a book, for external stuff, it's very important. Your external resource, isn't it,
Oh,
Margaret?
yeah, absolutely. And then the research is sometimes you can really get lost in a Google rabbit hole trying to
Mm.
Google stuff. I certainly, there's in the second book some of the Crimean War. So I did a bunch of research about the Crimean War and amputation. So I was Googling about amputation. What does an amputation kit look like? How did they do this in the Age of Sail? And, you wonder if the NSA or the CIA or the FBI is wondering what I'm Googling about amputating people, but it was really about, the research and how things were. And my critique group would certainly point out if they felt a word was too modern, like a descriptive word, and we go back and look at the origin. When was it used? How often was it used? Was it used in that period of time? So it can really get that nitty gritty. About, how to describe things, and you want to make sure you're describing them in a way, because I wrote it from Robert's point of view. So everything has to be from this 12-year-old kid's eyes and ears.
Yeah.
So if something was too advanced or too adult or too grown up or not consistent with mid 1800 mindset or whatever, I had to, go back and re-research it and, et cetera. So my critique group really helped me a lot, keeping my feet to the fire with accuracy. It was good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, it's a critique group, because I haven't heard of that before. That sounds really interesting. Was this online, or was it like a face-to-face thing? Was it?
It was face-to-face. At first,
Okay.
it was a pretty big group. I found it women's writers group that my mother had told me about in Huntington, New York. And I ended up not even finding that group. I found this other group quite by accident. And then I just started going. And, it held me accountable to getting writing done every other week, making sure I had 1,500 words, to bring with me. And then there were silly things, you write something and you read it, but you have to kind of step away from it. So I would prepare my pages, I would bring them to the group. And then on page 2, paragraph 3, there'd be like 10,000 pronouns. And I think, oh God, like, who wrote that? Who wrote that? It couldn't have been me, all those pronouns, or you find that you repeat a word too many times in a paragraph. And until you read it aloud, and you're reading it aloud to a group of objective people, then you really can't be objective about the work. And if you want it to be successful, you have to have a little bit of a bit of a thick skin to be able to hear if things are working or not working. So
yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that's a really good advice for anybody that's listening. Marguerite, that's brilliant. Yeah. So as well, what kind of keeps you motivated in your writing as well? Because this is kind of a motivational podcast, as you probably see. Right. So what kind of keeps you motivated? Just say, sometimes you may experience a bit of writer's block or hit a metaphorical wall. Has that ever happened to you before, and how did you kind of deal with that yourself?
Well, yes, many times. I spent a day, what I thought, set aside a few hours or a day or whatever to write. And my friends would say, oh, what did you do, on Saturday? And I could say, oh, I was writing. But really what I did was stare at a blank, word screen, thinking like, start a sentence, erase it, start a sentence, erase it. So writing is very frustrating. It's a little bit lonely because you really have to shut yourself away from people. And it's very frustrating because sometimes a paragraph can take me 2 days. Because and this is like a deficit with writing. If you be too much of a perfectionist, where you want it to be perfect, and then you end up spending so much time on the perfection. And then over time, I've learned that in the end, it's going to get edited. So an editor is going to come in, and if there's something wrong with the grammar or the paragraph, they're going to find it, and then we're going to fix it. So I found that it was actually stopping me from progressing, because I was so caught up in making sure that everything I had done up to that page 101 or whatever it was perfect. And the fact of the matter is, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. So if you're looking for perfect, forget it. This book went through three edits. So 3 editors. So myself reading it aloud to my critique group, and then 3 edits on top of that. And there was still at least 12 typographical errors after it went on to Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, which drove me nuts. It drove me nuts because I couldn't believe there were still spelling errors. But my publisher said, just everybody, even Stephen King, has spelling errors in their manuscript. So it's, it's one of those things. So I definitely hit those days, and it was hard to keep going. But for me, just when I every paragraph got me closer to the end. And it
Mm.
just was like, I'm almost there and I'm almost there. And then I would think about my grandfather. So when my grandfather was a huge influence growing up to me, I mean, he's been gone now 20 years, but and I was very close with him as an adolescent. So when he thought I was doing something good, he would say, that's cooking on the front burner. That was his saying, right? So I think about that all the time when it comes to the writing, because I don't think when he gave me the journal about Robert that he really realized what kind of inheritance. And I don't mean money wise or
No, yeah, yeah.
material wise. I mean the personal journey it sent me on, and how much I found about my family and how much I learned about myself. And it was a very tumultuous time in my life. My father was ill and dying. My aunt passed away. You know, my kids were growing up. Like all kinds of life
Things
changes were
happening.
happening all around me. So when I think about the tumultuous sea and the storms that as Robert journeyed around the oceans of the world, it was a little bit like what my life was like at the time. So to me, I keep thinking about my grandfather, and I feel that energy, you know, kind of pushing me forward. I know he would be very proud of what I've created from the journal. And it was hard, but just because it's hard doesn't mean you don't keep going. And I just, every paragraph brought me to the finish line. And I guess, I mean, this is a very long answer to your question.
Oh, no, it's fine. That makes sense.
But that's how I kept motivated. I mean, I knew I needed to accomplish this. And no matter what, I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to say, oh, I started a book, but I didn't want to be one of those people that started a book and never finished. So I wanted to bring it to completion. So, and I, you know, that's really what kept me going, but it's hard. It's hard because I definitely had writer's block. One of the ways that I got over that was research.
Yeah.
So I would start Googling things and Googling sea stories and reading captain's journals, like the British Navy has actual captain's journals going back to 1500, like before the 1500s. So they have a treasure trove of data for me. And I would just read the actual logs, which are in the Google open domain. So you can just get them, whatever has been uploaded by the English government and British government. And so I would read those, and then it would just make me think of a real story that actually would have happened that a captain wrote about. And then I would try to think about Robert's life and then connect them. And then that's how I would get out of the block. Does that make sense?
That does, absolutely. That's great, because you were saying about your grandfather as well, with that big metaphor he gave you, that can kind of stick in your mind as well and help you along. So that's brilliant. And it's great as well, the way people, you know, when they think of someone's written a book, they say, wow, they've gone so successful. They don't think of all the stuff you had to do before to get to that point. They don't, like the grind you have to go through, all the information you have to gather and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's so much research. And then when you're done, you're not really done, because then, I mean, I'm in the business world. My regular career is in the financial industry. And I didn't know anything about publishing. I mean, publishing is another whole thing to learn. So aside from learning how to write and figuring that out, then finding a publisher and then learning about all that. I mean, it's a beast.
Minefield.
It's a beast of an industry. And it's tough. It's tough to get published. It really tries on your self-esteem. So I would say to people, just close your eyes and don't close your eyes, but I mean, just keep plowing through.
Great stuff.
Keep going. Just keep going. Don't, think of, what was the Disney movie Nemo and the, oh my God, what's Dory, right? Like just.
Find a Dory.
Like you just have to keep going, just swim through it. Like, and it gets muddy and mucky and hard and discouraging, but you have to just keep going because you can do it. You can do it. You just have to not give up.
Exactly. No, that's great, Marguerite. Thanks very much for giving that explanation of your book. It's fascinating. Like, I can actually think of a movie. Hopefully, I don't know if you've thought about that yourself, but I'd say it would make it kind of a good movie by the sounds of things, you know.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But I would say, I just did an author visit at the high school in my town, and one of the questions that the kids asked was, what would be your advice to aspiring writers? And my answer is, get it out of your head and onto the paper, and don't worry if it's perfect. Don't worry if it's out of order. Don't worry if it's jumbled. Just go from your head to the paper and then figure it out later. But don't let looking at the mountains stop you from taking the first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because a lot of people, when they think they have to do like a certain amount of words, like a couple of thousand words, it seems like a mountain to climb. But they're doing little bits, like even like a 2 pages or 3 pages every day, you're gonna get there, you know. So don't
You
put yourself.
are.
Would you agree with that? Like, yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, in my case, I had a journal as an outline. Okay. So
Mm.
I had something that I knew the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So the first book, I didn't really do an outline. The second book, I outlined each chapter. And that actually, I think, helped me finish the second book faster, because I want these 3 things to happen in chapter 1. I want these 4 things to happen in chapter 2, and so on and so forth. And so I looked at the journal and I wrote down everything from his life journal that I wanted,
Right.
and I mapped out each chapter. And so when
Yeah.
I was finishing up the last thing on the list, the last bullet point, I knew I was finishing the chapter. And so it just, I was like, I finished 1. Now I finished 2, and then, and
Yeah.
it is really one step at a time,
Mm.
and you just have to be
Yeah.
patient. It's really hard, but just be patient with your, like, and don't beat yourself up about it, but like I
Mm.
went through that too. It's like, oh my gosh, it's taking me so
Yeah.
long. This is awful. I'm never going to do it. I'm an idiot. What am I thinking?
Yeah.
You go through things like that, and you
Mm.
just have to like try to talk yourself off the negative and into
Mm.
the positive.
Yeah.
So what? You only wrote 5 words that day. So what? You wrote 5 more words than nothing.
Mm. Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
5 more than 0. So it's a good thing. So you have to always glass half full. Always think, I did this, not what you didn't do, but what you did do. And that actually helps your brain. It helps your
Mm.
dopamine, your
Yeah.
all of the serotonin, all the feel good chemicals
Yeah.
in your brain.
Yeah.
Every time you set a goal for yourself and you accomplish it, your brain, gives you that kind of runner's high a little bit, right? I mean,
Yeah. Big
and
time.
it
Yeah.
makes you happy. So you just have to set even small goals. And then each
Mm.
time you reach that goal, if it's to research, how a rabbit digs a burrow out, if that's something
Yeah.
to do with what you're writing
Yeah.
about. So then
Yeah.
you spend the day figuring that out. I spent
Mm.
2 hours on my couch pretending to row a boat. So I know how to row a boat, but Robert didn't know how to row a boat. So I watched a YouTube video on how, like, for dummies, how to row a boat, right? And I imagined what it would have been like for this 12-year-old kid, not
Mm.
knowing how to manage the oars and having the weight of all the officers in the little boat and trying to figure it all out and not understanding the way the current goes and, all of those
Mm.
things. And I sat there on the couch and I kind of acted it out for 2 hours before I even wrote a word. And so that's part of writing. That is
Yeah.
part of writing.
Exactly.
So if that's on your list, that you accomplished that bit of research, and now you have a better idea of how you want to portray it on the page, and then you move forward from there. So
Yeah, that's great. That's brilliant. It makes such a good point, because always look at your progress as well, like what you've done so far. Don't look at how far you have to go. Just look at stuff.
yeah,
Wow, look what I've done so far. That's brilliant. And
yeah,
this is great. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry about
I
that.
mean, I can tell you, I can't believe I've written 2 books. Like, I did it.
Brilliant.
It was hard. I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. I'm very proud of it, but I
Mm.
still can't believe being on the other side. I mean, I have 1 more to write to finish the series, and then I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
It is easier to sell books when you have multiple books out.
Mhm.
And, I don't know if I'm ever going to become a New York Times bestseller, or, what's going to happen. I do have somebody working on kind of screenplay ideas
Oh,
for the
brilliant.
series. So hopefully be able to present that to some production companies, and who knows, maybe it will go
Yeah.
nowhere. But if I never try it, then you'll never
Yeah.
accomplish it. So
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
trying is making a decision to not try. So you
Mm.
have to
Yeah.
try, because you're never going to get there if you don't. And it feels fantastic. I mean, the first time I held this book in my hand and I saw my name on it,
Yeah,
and
class.
my author page, and I had to do the author bio on the website, and I'm like, I'm an author. Like, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Brilliant.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's and that in and of itself is encouraging. And to be able to
Oh,
say it's
definitely.
not just one book now, it's two books. Like that is like super official now. Like the first one being published, that was an accomplishment. Now I have two books. Now it's like extra official. That's
Yeah.
how it
No,
feels anyway. Yeah.
no, no, very well done to you. Congratulations, and all the best in your future writing as well. And
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, I'm going to read it myself. Looking forward to reading myself. And
No, but
what?
when you do, yeah, I would love your opinion. I
Yeah,
always want to hear the
yeah,
feedback. So definitely get
yeah,
it back in touch with me and let me know if you've read it, what you think.
yeah.
And
I will do. Yeah,
if you find a typo, tell me where it is so I can fix
yeah,
it.
yeah. I'll go through with a magnifying glass.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, that's great. What other kind of what books do you like to read yourself? And I suppose what influenced you most in your writing? What
Well,
authors or what books?
yeah, I'm a bit of a mud as far as what I like as far as genre. So
Yeah.
growing up was a lot of romance, a lot of Stephen King, and then a lot
Mm,
of espionage detective stuff. Like I read a lot of Tom Clancy, Daniel Steele as romance, but my
right.
favorite book is Gone with the Wind. That's my favorite book.
Okay.
And my
Yeah.
second favorite book is Anna Karenina. So interesting that when I was growing up, I wouldn't have said that I'm interested in historical fiction, but actually I must be because those two
Yeah.
books are my favorite books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I love animals. I would read animal stories. There's Dick Francis wrote a wonderful series, detective type stories, all based around horse and horse stables, because he himself, I think, was a jockey in his life before he was writing. So those, I read a ton of those. So I love the detective kind of
Mm,
stuff, the
great.
action
Yeah.
thing, and it's the same with movies. I love
Mm,
science fiction. And with my kids, we read a lot of fantasy stuff, of course, Harry
yeah.
Potter, all of that. But we read a lot of, we were always at the library looking for new series and, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as what motivates me, it's just wanting to aspire to uh, get my readers even a smidgen of interest that, like when I read J.K. Rowling, or when I read, Gone with the Wind, or, any of those books, how I was just glued to the page. And
Yeah.
I would just hope to have that experienced, with my readers.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really, really good. Great list
Yeah.
there. So that's one of my favorite things about the podcast is you get to get some great recommends on books as well. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I do so much research that I really haven't been doing a lot of recreational reading myself.
Mm,
I miss
yeah.
it because I was a big reader. Also Jane Austen, she's another one, Sense and
Mm.
Sensibility and Pride and
Oh, yeah,
Prejudice,
that's a
also
famous one. Yeah.
another, which
Yeah.
is historical fiction and romance, right?
Mm,
All thrown
yeah.
in
Yeah.
together. So I can't even tell you even a recent book other than what I read with my kids. So
Yeah.
I read a
Yeah.
lot of juvenile fiction, but I would say, what if you want to write, you have to read, and you
Mm,
should be reading within the genre that you want to write, because you need to know what what your readers are, looking at, what's in the universe, on the bookshelves, in the stores, etc. It certainly helps your vocabulary.
mm.
And then you can, kind of do it like a critique almost, right? You just read it, and then you can say, oh, well, that page was terrible. I'll never write a page that is that terrible. Or you
Yeah.
can say the opposite, that page was fantastic. So it's also a good way to kind of judge what's published, what's out there as a writer, as well as what the goal could be for readers. So
Mm. No, that's great advice. Thanks a million, Marguerite. Brilliant, yeah. And I suppose music as well. What's your favorite music to listen to? Do you ever listen to music while you're writing? That's it's just kind of a
um,
question I've
well,
been
when
interested. I've
I'm
started.
my
Sorry.
mom is a concert pianist, so I grew up with a lot
Okay.
of classical music, right? So I love
Mm.
classical music, but I listen to, I guess, Fleetwood Mac. I listen to Michelle Branch, Phil Collins, Genesis.
Mm. Great.
Sometimes I can rock out to some Zeppelin or some AC/DC, really depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, U2 is another fave. And
Mm.
I Rob Thomas, actually, most recently,
Okay. Yeah.
Santana, it's a very eclectic mix. kind of like an
like myself.
iPod way of looking at it instead of, but I grew up with Pat Benatar and, Led Zeppelin and In Through the Outdoor and, AC/DC, Back in Black, and, that host of Bruce Springsteen, all of those,
Yeah.
big greats. So, the Eagles, God, I don't know, as I sit here, it starts to churn up.
Yeah.
But I like all kinds of music. And as a writer now, I hear the poetry much more and appreciate the poetry of lyrics than I ever did as a kid.
Yeah,
As a
you
kid.
must have been looking at my record collection, because I love all that kind of music as well.
That's right.
Great stuff. Yeah.
And I'm
this
actually like my daughter's at college and she's getting exposed to some country music. So I'm starting to listen to maybe a little bit more country. I'm certainly a Taylor Swift fan. I love her. I think she's fantastic. And Carrie Underwood as well. So that's like kind of a new thing, like dabbling as country music starts to seep into the pop radio and, you get a little bit more exposed to it. So I love music, but when I'm writing, I am more apt to listen to, so for instance, in the first book, there's a jungle scenes. So when I was writing that, I actually had the YouTube playing of jungle sounds, of the rainforest sounds in the background, because it was helping me bring the imagery in as I was listening to that. So I am a huge fan of David Attenborough. So I start my Saturday and Sunday mornings pretty much listening to him and whatever's on BBC that plays him, at least in my neck of the woods, on Saturdays and Sundays mornings. And it's very soothing to me. I can sometimes have that playing in the background all day long, because I've seen just about every documentary that he's ever done. So it's not anything new, but it's just a nice, the background music and his voice and just talking about the natural world. That's a very relaxing thing for me. So, that's one of the things that I can do, is just listen to that stuff.
Great stuff. Yeah. No, this has been great. Thanks a million for coming on, Marguerite. It's been great talking to you, and I wish you all the success going forward to your books. And as I said, if you could send me on a link to your website, and I'll put it up on the show notes as well for people to check out.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'll send it to you as soon as we're done. But thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed meeting you, and this was great. And I actually watched a few of your episodes, and one of your other authors is also on Long Island. So we've connected. We had
That's right, yeah.
The other day.
Oh, cool.
So we're gonna meet next week for coffee or whatever. And so I made a really nice new connection with another author on Long Island. So I was very happy about that. So
yeah, it's funny. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's funny when you do stuff like this, it kind of opens the door to different stuff, like collaborations and all that. It's brilliant, because I did mention before on the podcast as well, a previous guest, that I'm involved in a writers group in Ireland. And it's Inkies, it's called, where every Saturday, I don't know what the time, it's usually 1:30 in Dublin, so whatever that is in America, New York. But like you work off a prompt every Saturday, and the stuff that come off the prompts is great. Like you have a half an hour to write off. Yeah,
that's a great way to write. That's a great way to write. It really gets your brain going. It's a great way to practice, and it's fun. It's fun. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks a million, Marguerite, for coming on. So your full name again is Marguerite, for people to check out.
Marguerite. My writing persona is Margriet Maitland, and it's runawayatSea.com. So I will send you the link. And there's 2 books out. The third book will be coming out at some point this year. I'm not sure when. I'm actually in the middle of moving, so until I get settled in my new house, I kind of have to wait for that. So I'll really, hit the ground running with it in about 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, best of luck, and thanks a million again, and all the best in your future writing. Okay, Marguerite.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, so thank
Mark.
No, brilliant. Thanks a million for tuning into Mark's Motivational Podcast, another Authors Tuesday. So stay tuned for Thursday. We're going to have another guest on. Take care. Thanks again, Marguerite.
Thanks. Take care.